Constitutional framework. 73. Speaker as a head of Lok Sabha Secretariat. The Speaker is also the head of the Lok Sabha Secretariat, which functions under his control and direction. His authority over the secretarial staff and the security staff is final. All strangers, visitors and press correspondents are subject to his discipline and order. The Speaker is responsible for the protection of the rights of members and for ensuring that all reasonable amenities are provided to them while they are in-house. Finally, no alteration or addition can be made in the Parliament House without the Speaker's permission. State Legislature. The State Legislature or Legislative Council occupies a preeminent and central position in the political system of a state. Articles 168 to 212 in Part 6 of the Constitution deal with the organization, composition, duration, officers, procedures, privileges, powers and so on of the state legislature. Though they are similar to that of Parliament, still there are some differences as well. Upper House or Legislative Council. When the Constitution came into force on the 26th of January 1950, the provision was made in Article 168 for having two houses of legislature in 6 states, namely, Bihar, Bombay, Madras, Punjab, Uttar Pradesh and West Bengal. Article 169 states that the Parliament may by law provide for the abolition of the Legislative Council of a state having such a council or for the creation of such a council in a state having no such council, if the Legislative Assembly of the state passes a resolution to that effect by a majority of the total membership of the Assembly and by a majority of not less than 2/3 of the members of the Assembly present and voting. Composition of Legislative Council. The members of the Legislative Council are indirectly elected. The maximum strength of the Council is fixed at 1/3 of the total strength of the Assembly and the minimum strength is fixed at 40. The members of a Legislative Council are elected as follows. Black circle 1/3 are elected by the members of local bodies in the state like municipalities, district bodies, etc. 1/12 are elected by graduates of 3 years. Standing and residing within state. Black circle 1/12 are elected by teachers of 3 years standing in the state, not lower in standard than secondary school. Black circle 1/3 are elected by the members of the Legislative Assembly of the state from amongst persons who are not members of the Assembly, and the remaining are nominated by the governor from amongst persons who have a special knowledge or practical experience of literature, science, art, cooperative movement and social service. Like the Rajya Sabha, the Legislative Council is a continuing chamber. It is a permanent body and is not subject to dissolution, but 1/3 of its members retire on the expiration of every 2nd year. So, a member continues for 6 years. The vacant seats are filled up by fresh elections and nominations at the beginning of every 3rd year. The retiring members are also eligible for re-election and renomination any number of times. Relevance of Legislative Council. In India, bicameral legislature is in 7 states: Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, UP, Bihar, Maharashtra, Karnataka and Jammu and Kashmir. The question is whether the upper house in the states have their utility is debatable. The upper house gives representation to the special interests in the state. It functions as a revising chamber. It is a safeguard against fast legislation by the lower house. It consists of seasoned and experienced people. It has made valuable suggestions on matters of public importance during debates in the House, which are profitably utilized by the government in the implementation of its policies and program. The critics of the bicameral system point out that the upper chamber is a superfluous institution and a burden on the public exchequer. It is clear from the scheme of the Constitution set out in Articles 168 and 169 that there is no mandate under the Constitution for having the bicameral system in the states. '74. General Studies, Mains, Paper 2. The founders of the Constitution provided for upper houses in only those states which succeeded to the existing provinces under the 1935 Constitution passed by the British Parliament. For the states newly created by the Constitution, no provision for upper house is made. Accordingly, the erstwhile states of Bombay, Madras, Punjab, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar and West Bengal had originally upper house. Powers of legislative councils. As regards to its powers, the Legislative Council plays a more advisory role. A bill, other than a money bill, may originate in either house of the legislature. Over legislative matters, it has only a suspensive veto for a maximum period of 4 months. Over financial matters, its powers are not absolute. A money bill originates only in the Assembly and the Council may detain it only for a period of 14 days. As in the case of the Parliament at the center, there is no provision for a joint sitting of both the houses of the state's legislature to resolve a deadlock in case of ordinary bill between them. Thus, the Legislative Council is only a subordinate component of the state legislature. Chairman of Legislative Council. The chairman is elected by the council itself amongst its members. The chairman vacates his office in any of the following 3 cases. 1. If he ceases to be a member of the council. 2. If he resigns by writing to the deputy chairman. 3. If he is removed by a resolution passed by a majority of all the then members of the council. Such a resolution can be moved only after giving 14 days advance notice. As a presiding officer, the powers and functions of the chairman in the council are similar to those of the speaker in the assembly. However, the speaker has one special power, which is not enjoyed by the chairman. The speaker decides whether a bill is a money bill or not, and his decision on this question is final. As in the case of the speaker, the salaries and allowances of the chairman are also fixed by the state legislature. They are charged on the consolidated fund of the state and thus are not subject to annual vote of the legislature. Lower house or legislative assembly election and composition. The Legislative Assembly consists of not more than 500 members and not less than 60 members chosen by direct election from territorial constituencies in the state for the purpose of election. Each state shall be divided into territorial constituencies in such manner that the ratio between the population of each constituency and the number of seats allotted to it, as far as practicable, remain same throughout the state. At the end of each decennial census, the constituencies will be recast to make the necessary adjustments to meet the variation in population. Thus, the members of the Legislative Assembly are elected on the basis of universal adult franchise without any consideration of caste, creed, and religion. There is, however, a provision for safeguarding the interests of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes and Anglo-Indian community. Some constituencies are reserved for scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, and members belonging to these communities can be elected from them. There is a provision in the Constitution that when the governor of a state feels that the Anglo-Indian community has not been given proper representation, he can nominate one member belonging to that community in the state assembly. The members of the Legislative Assembly are entitled to receive such salaries and allowances as may from time to time be determined by the legislature by law. Duration of the Legislative Assembly. Like the Lok Sabha, the Legislative Assembly is not a continuing chamber. Its normal term is 5 years from the date of its first meeting after the general elections. The expiration of the period of 5 years operates as automatic dissolution of the Assembly. However, the governor is authorized to dissolve the Assembly at any time, even before the completion of 5 years, to pave the way for fresh elections if the government loses majority. Further, the term of the Assembly can be extended during the period of national emergency by a law of Parliament for 1 year at a time. This extension cannot continue beyond a period of 6 months after the emergency has ceased to operate. This means that the fresh elections for Assembly should be conducted within 6 months after the revocation of emergency. C.
말해보고 싶은 것 같다. 예? 말해보고 싶은 것 같다. 이쁘다. 반다 다르게.
इन्फॉर्मेशन मिल रहा
तो लड़ते रहे कि नहीं नहीं मैं बात करूंगा नहीं मैं बात करूंगा मतलब उन्हें लड़की की नहीं पड़ी एक सड़क पे अगर लड़की खड़ी है तो आप उसका रेट तय करने लगोगे तो ये जो हुआ है वो मुझे लगा बहुत शॉकिंग है वो भी वहां डिफेंस कॉलोनी जिसको पॉश इलाका कहते हैं और किसी ने मैं जिसको वो वीडियो किया था डिफेंस कॉलोनी में कोई बिलीव ही नहीं करा कि डिफेंस कॉलोनी में कैसे हो सकता है वो पॉश इलाका ऐसा ऐसा एरिया नहीं कि मैं कहीं अंदर कहीं किनारे पे खड़ी हूँ तो लोग मुझे बस स्टैंड पे खड़ी हूँ मैं बोल रही हूँ
It stands 75. The Legislative Assembly. Powers of the Legislative Assembly is popular and more powerful chamber of the state legislature. It can make laws on any subject provided in the state list. It can also make a law on a subject of the concurrent list in case it is not in conflict with a law already made by the Parliament. It has control over the Council of Ministers. Its members may ask questions from the minister, introduce resolutions or motions, and may pass a vote of censure to dismiss the government. The ministry is collectively responsible to the Assembly. The defeat of the ministry in the Assembly amounts to fall of government. It controls the finances of the state. A money bill can originate only in the Assembly and it is taken as passed by the Legislative Council after a lapse of 14 days after reference made to it by the Assembly. It may pass, reject the demands or reduce their amount, implying adoption or rejection of the budget and thereby victory or defeat of the government. Thus, no tax can be imposed or withdrawn without the approval of the Legislative Assembly. It has constituent powers too. Functions of the Legislative Assembly. According to Article 368, some bills of constitutional amendment first passed by the Parliament shall be referred to the states for ratification. It is here that the Assembly has its role to play. It has to give its verdict by passing a resolution by simple majority showing approval or disapproval of the said bill. It is also provided that the President shall refer to the Assembly of the concerned state a bill regarding alteration in its territory for eliciting its views before he recommends that such a bill be introduced in the Parliament. It takes part in the election of the President of India. It considers reports submitted by various independent agencies like the State Public Service Commission, Auditor General and others. Speaker and Deputy Speaker of Legislative Assembly. Every legislative assembly chooses members of the assembly to be the speaker and the deputy speaker respectively, whenever these offices become vacant. Framework. They vacate their offices if they cease to be the members of the assembly. The presiding officers are paid such salaries and allowances as are prescribed by the legislature of the state by law. The main characteristics of this high office are dignity, independence and impartiality. The speaker or the deputy speaker, as the case may be, resigns from his office by writing to the deputy speaker in the case of the speaker and to the speaker in the case of the deputy speaker. They may be removed from office by a resolution of the assembly passed by a majority of all the members of the assembly. No resolution for the purpose of the removal of the speaker or the deputy speaker is moved unless at least 14-day notice is given to the intention to move such a resolution. While any resolution for the removal of the speaker from the office is under consideration, the speaker will not preside over such a meeting, although he can participate in the proceedings or not, as well as the legislature is the pivot of a democratic system of government and the speaker is the pivot of the legislature. He is vested with powers to ensure orderly discussion in the House, to enforce the rules of procedure, to control disorder and to take disciplinary action against members indulging in unruly behavior. The presiding officer should stand above party politics in order to command respect of all groups. Restrictions on power of the state legislatures. There are many restrictions on the powers of the state legislature, which make them dependent to the will of the parliament. These are legislative restrictions. State legislatures can neither legislate on any item of the union list nor on a residuary subject. Though it can enact laws on a subject mentioned in the concurrent list, which shall prevail and to the extent to which the state law is not violative of central law. Article 249 provides that the Rajya Sabha may pass a special resolution by a 2/3 majority of members, present and voting, to transfer any item, from the state list to the union or concurrent list for the period of 1 year on the plea that it is expedient in the national interest. '76. General Studies, Mains Paper. Consideration of President. There are categories that require that a bill passed by the state legislature shall be reserved by the governor for the consideration of the president, even though passed by the state legislature. Bill dealing with compulsory acquisition of private property, bills derogatory to the powers of the High Court, or seeking imposition of tax on a commodity essential by an act of Parliament or any other bill likely to conflict with some union law fall within this category. The state legislatures cannot override the veto of the president. There are some kinds of bills that cannot be introduced in the state legislatures without the prior permission of the president. Bills seeking to impose restrictions on trade, commerce or intercourse with other states or within the state fall within this category. State of emergency. The president is empowered to declare a state of emergency in the country without consulting the states. But once such an emergency has been declared, the parliament is empowered to legislate on the subjects mentioned in the state list. Thus, the position of the state legislatures in practical terms is subordinate to the Parliament of India. Unique status of Delhi. The Constitution, 69th Amendment Act, 1991 added. Articles 239AA and 239AB in the Constitution of India, which provided for special status to Delhi as National Capital Territory of Delhi. It provided for a legislative assembly in Delhi and the administrator was redesignated as Lieutenant Governor. The Legislative Assembly of Delhi was granted power to make laws on the items given in the state list of Schedule 7 except entry number 1, 2 and 18, which provides for public order, police and land respectively. There have always been a demand of full statehood to Delhi. This demand has increased manifold under the present leadership of Delhi. The population of Delhi is close to 2 crore. The present setup of administration is divided into 3 tiers: P central government, state government and the local body, i.e. Municipal Corporation of Delhi. The lack of clear-cut division of powers coupled with party politics leaves a lot of room for shredding responsibility and lack of accountability in all 3 levels of administration. The other side of the matter argues that Delhi is the capital city and all the important national institutions, foreign embassies etc. are situated here all over the world. The administration of capital city is looked after by the central government, hence, Delhi can't be granted full statehood. To resolve the issue, middle path should be taken and following points may be taken into the consideration by concerned authorities. The land of Delhi be marked carefully and some of the land may be earmarked to state government for carrying out its business smoothly. The Delhi police may be bifurcated into VIP security, traffic, law and order. Out of these, the law and order may be handed over to state government. All the authorities concerned must work in tandem, amicably for the welfare of people of Delhi. There should be permanent council wherein all the stakeholders are adequately represented. All the contentious issues must be resolved at this forum only. Judicial opinion may be obtained regarding interpretation of all ambiguous, contentious provisions. With 2. Go. B. 2. The